energy sources for the homestead. If the power grid went down, be it whatever it is in your area, could be electrical or natural gas pipelines, whatever it is that ceases to function, what options do you have set up to overcome that deficit of energy? Some means of power generation are better suited for short term and then others long term. And so I have 6 categories here just to kind of run through. This series, the Homestead System series, is a basic outline just to get you thinking, anyways, about the different types of categories that you would need in an emergency. So this video actually concludes that series, and we're starting new things after this video. So let's go now, though, into the first energy source. So in my first category, I have gas, diesel, natural gas, propane, and hydrogen. These can be used as a source for creating heat, for cooking, or for warming the home, or it could be to power a generator so that you can create current to create your own electrical grid. Now, depending on where you live, you may want to use geothermal with the use of a heat pump. This is becoming a little more common, but it does still require you to drill, fairly far down in the ground, and depending on the composition of ground you have, it may be a lot more expensive than in other areas. And so this is something to look into, though, more area specific, but it has a lot of benefits. And it basically is, for the most part, pretty much maintenance free besides the heat pump. The third category is the use of biomass, or it's also sometimes referred to as biofuels. And so you could use woods to be converted over to wood gas, and a whole slew of oils can be converted over. And so this is something that does get some attention, but unless you know how to use these materials and convert them over, unless you have that technology and the knowledge, which most people don't, a lot of this is just kind of abstract, and it never goes anywhere. Typically, you see people that are engineers or that are really into tech that start to convert engines over to run off of biofuels. And so it's something that you're going to have to really research and study to learn that process. But it's a real option, though, for those on a homestead. Category 4, marine sources. And this is really a lot better if you live next to an ocean, for example, or if you have running water through your property, especially if it's going downhill and there's a lot of force behind it. But it doesn't require a lot to get this going, depending on the system you pick. But tidal forces, also known as ocean energy, that's one thing. But just because you may live on the coast, maybe you even have beachfront property, doesn't mean you're going to actually put things out in the ocean to harvest that energy from the waves. You may, but most people probably wouldn't. So the more practical application for this is going to be people who live probably in more secluded areas that have access to a strong moving river or stream system, and they can harness that movement. And so that's something to consider. This can be actually kind of built into a system. Sometimes it's called the hydroelectric power system. And you can make your own hydroelectrical system using this format. Now, number 5 here is solar. And solar collectors in different ways are probably going to be one of the first things people think of when they think of alternative energy. And it's been around for several decades in a very strong way, but it's been around even longer than that. Solar is typically found in 2 formats, active and passive. Active solar is going to be solar panels that you would see maybe on a house or freestanding that actually takes the collection of the sun, those electrically charged ions, and brings them through the line and takes it through the system and deposits the energy in the battery banks. That's in contrast to passive solar that you have various things that will get heated or warmed by the sun in different ways, and that helps create um, an offset from using maybe the grid or another means of power. So this is definitely something that can help heat your home, to give you electricity. There's all kinds of things with solar. I think that solar probably should be included in most people's systems on some level, even if you don't have a lot of sunlight where you live. It still would be a good idea to have at least some addition to this to your system overall. And so it may not encompass even half of where your power comes from, but it is good to diversify systems. And when it comes to solar, man, you can't really go wrong, even if you have limited sunlight. And number six, just like some people have difficulty with not having enough sunlight, or at least they don't think they can justify solar, even though I think it's still a good idea on some level, some people have a lot of wind in where they live. That's very windy. And like where I live, it's off and on. But some people have tremendous winds and some people have no winds. And if you really don't have any wind at all, or if you live way in a canyon and it's blocked and you don't really get any kind of current, a lot of times you do need to be at a higher elevation on some level to really maximize wind power. Then by no means I would not do this. But if you do have wind, this can really work hand in hand with solar, or it can really just be a good add-on to any system. So wind power, or you have wind turbines. Now this is something that is somewhat misunderstood on some level, but they are pretty efficient. They are pretty efficient, and they're a lot better than they used to be. So a lot of people are still thinking about how they used to be, and they've come a long way, just like with solar. So you want to kind of keep your eyes out with any of these systems to see where the new versions and the new technology that pertains to each one of these energy sources, because over time they have gotten so much better that it's kind of something that unless you're into this and you keep up with it, you wouldn't even recognize the changes over time. So in conclusion, you want to look at how much energy you need on a daily basis. And you can do that by breaking down your bills, your electric bill, your propane bill, your natural gas bill, or whatever else types of energy sources you use. And figure out how much you need a day. And maybe factor in a buffer just in case you need it more that day than normal. So that's one way to look at it, but I would probably have at least 2 different types of alternative energy sources on the homestead. Solar is probably going to be a big one for most, and possibly wind turbine and or another one. Maybe it's just having a generator with some fuel stockpiled. But just don't forget to put fuel stabilizers if that fuel needs that, and just to be aware that there's limitations with pretty much any system. And that's why it would be smart to combine or to use in combination various sources of energy to make your overall system. Especially if one of the system went down for whatever reason, you would have a totally different system to give you at least some minimum levels of energy. So thanks again for coming along and watching the series here. And the videos going forth on this channel are going to be more about individual philosophies and thoughts that come across when people are becoming more prepared. So stay tuned, and we'll talk about a diverse range of other topics. As always, thanks for your support. You guys take care.